I'm very open about it. It's okay. And we'll pick on, if you're blushing, I'm going to pick on you. But let me show you about some intimacy roads. This is, I think, why you have invited other people that you're married to or you have, because I want to teach you about how to do intimacy properly. This might surprise you, but here we go. Road to intimacy. You'll notice this road is straight. There's another road that takes a little diversion. Okay? So on this side of the straight road, this is how men view intimacy, which I have a clear understanding of because I'm a man. And this is how females view intimacy, which I have a clear understanding of because I've been married to one for 30 years. There is a diversion that occurs right here at this dotted line. About a year into marriage. Maybe less, maybe a little bit more, but a diversion occurs. You'll notice the road diverts. It goes away. So you actually end up further away from each other than you started. And we want to prevent this. Why? Below this dotted line, the definition of intimacy on the man's side, sex. After the dotted line, the definition for the man of intimacy, sex. That never changes for them. It's their default. Okay? But a woman below this dotted line, definition of intimacy, sex, new experience, we never talked about it before. This is great. Lasts for about a year. Then she diverts because her estrogen levels change and her definition goes quite more extensive. So her definition becomes friendship, affection, spirituality, togetherness, kindness, tenderness, safety, empathy. Sex is still in there, buried deep between feelings, emotions, and trust. The main difference you don't understand between men and women is this. For a woman to be sexually interested, she must feel loved. For a man to feel loved, he must be sexual. You're starting at two different places, and you've got to understand that so you can address it. Women will not be interested in sex if they don't feel loved. Men will not feel loved if they don't have sex. So that's starting in two different places makes it really difficult. Women, here's the thing you have to remember. On my motorcycle, my dad took me on my first motorcycle trip because I do cross-country riding. We went to Chicago from here. It took us 6 days on a motorcycle. It was horrendous. It took forever to get to Chicago. I said, I'm never going to like this, Dad. I don't know why you do this. Because then, when we got there, we had to spend another 6 days getting back. My dad was like, what do you mean? Look at all the stuff we've seen. He totally enjoyed the journey. He cared not if we got to Chicago. So, using that analogy, men want to arrive. They want to get to Chicago. They don't care how they do it. They just want to get there fast. And if they don't arrive at Chicago, they don't feel like they made any journey at all. And a woman can actually be totally content not getting to Chicago. Just the journey. When you're talking about sex, if you don't understand that, you're going to offend your marriage partner, especially the dudes. Because we're not wired this way. By the way, I have discovered that a woman's form of intimacy is God's way. That's way better. But the default intimacy for the dude is arriving. And you got to realize you have to change. The only way I love motorcycle riding is when I recognize it's the journey that matters. And that's the only way I've really figured out my wife and intimacy is understanding the journey. So let me help you dudes figure this out. We're going to use an analogy. So I don't have to say sex 100 times. Two kinds of farmers exist in Idaho. This farmer here is a dry farmer. Make it a square. Dry farmers, they just plow the field. They inherit it from their family. They plant the crops. They sit back and they wait for the rain. No investment, not much effort. If it rains, then life is good. In my analogy, rain is sex. If you're a dry farmer, you're not happy unless it's raining. But the other kind of farmers, which you see more and more of, which is good, are called pivot farmers. These farmers make a big investment up front. They drill down. They build a sprinkler system, which waters their crops. So to them, rain is a bonus. If you can figure out as a dude how to become a pivot farmer, then you're not so much determined on the arrival. You recognize, hey, if we're not having sex, but we're doing some of these other things, which she considers sex, but I don't, doesn't matter because I have my own sprinkler system. And sex is a bonus to me. Rain is a bonus. Making sense? If you'll do that sort of component, it will fix your road where you can do this. So the quicker a guy can figure this out, the quicker he can come over and enjoy true intimacy the same way as her. Then you can be like two little rats in a wool sock, which I've talked about with my wife. You're much closer here than when you began, and that's, you don't want to end up further away. You want to end up closer. But I had to figure this out. It's not my default wiring. I had to address this. So I'm going to teach you guys one easy way to remember. Okay, talking to the dudes. Here you go. It's all about dishes. So, looking for my single guys. Oh, Eric, you just standing right up there. Let's ask Eric's single guy, right here at the tie, dressed up today. Eric, you live with a bunch of dudes? Ever done the dishes?
A couple times.
Why?
Because then it overflows if you don't do it.
Okay, so you did the dishes because they were needed to be done. Did that make your roommates happy? Yeah. Did you want to have sex with Matt? No. Let me reiterate what Eric has said. He does the dishes in his apartment because they need to be done. And that makes his roommates happy, but he doesn't have sex with them. All right. All dudes will do this. They will. It's a weird thing that happens in your brain. So here's what happens. Eric's going to get married. He's going to go home. His wife's working hard. He's working hard. He comes home. The dishes are dirty. He's like, oh, I've been in this situation before. The dishes need to be cleaned. He cleans the dishes. His wife comes out and says, wow, that was a nice thing. I feel loved. Let's make some rain. So this is the first time the guy experiences this, and he says, wow, I like rain. I'm going to do the dishes more. So the next day he wakes up and he does the dishes. And he's waiting for and he does a little rain dance. And the rain doesn't come because she's like, what are you doing? I'm doing the rain dance. And pretty soon he's like, well, that's dumb. I do the dishes. I don't get rain. I'm not going to do the dishes. She says, this is dumb. The only time you do the dishes is when you think it's going to rain. And you see what happens? You start tying behaviors to sex. The guys default that. And you're dry farming. You're basing your behavior. Spoil your wife, buy her things, do chores, take care of her for rain because you're a dry farmer. If you're a pivot farmer, you do the dishes because the dishes are dirty. You don't get to count that as service. Anything you would do as a single person in your marriage is not counted as service. If you do the dishes, that don't count. You would have to do this if you're single. If you have to do the laundry, that doesn't count. I don't care if you're doing her laundry or hers doing his laundry. That doesn't count as service. You don't get to count those things as I'm doing service, therefore. No, that is not how marriage works. You're a partnership. It's an unselfish union. So that's the secret, by the way, of creating happy marriage. It's all about the dishes. If you want strong intimacy in marriage, this is how you do it. And this creates a terminology for you spouses in here that can use now. My wife uses words like, I feel like you're searching for grapes. What that means is code word is like, hey, you're dry farming. Like you're getting frustrated, but I don't feel loved. And I'm like, I take a step back and say, you're right, my bad. I converted back to my man brain. I'm sorry. And so I back off a little bit and I start understanding she doesn't feel loved. I got to do better. And she understands sometimes, wow, he doesn't feel loved. Well, we better see if we can do a little rain dance. And we kind of mutually do this. It's an unselfish union. And sometimes it's a filter. Yeah. Like, that's not going to end up well. She would kill me. Questions on my little fancy diagram? That was 30 years of experience for free, by the way. You just got it. You can figure it out. It took me longer to figure it out, but man, if I could have figured it out earlier, wow, it would have been so much better for her and for me. But it took me so long because it's not your default. The default boy, man, is reward-based. Okay, looking at some of these questions, let's throw them up here. What's the most safe effective form of birth control? Abstinence. But you can practice a timing method if you want, but they call it your parents. But I'm gonna save that question until later because we're gonna talk about female stuff in a lot more depth. So I want to give you that in more depth because that's a test type question. Why do boys get turned on from hugs? Well, let's show you what my boy looks like. That's your limbic system. The prefrontal cortex is actually, I don't know the other word, I'm going to say decision. So that's a super big deal, very important. And I would actually call this selfish, this is where you're going to get offended, and unselfish. So I'm going to answer this question being a little bit more about why boys are turned on by hugs. Okay? Unselfish and selfish. So a dog that comes up and sees something it wants, it tastes it. It's a completely limbic system creature. Animals are limbic system. What they see is what they do. You can teach it to be unselfish because of punishment, so you're like, no, I put this hot dog down, if you eat that, I'm going to kick your head in. And the dog learns not to eat the ham, but it's not doing it because it's doing it for fear of being penalized. But humans, prefrontal cortex, right there, have the ability to make a decision. Like capsaicin. That's a chemical you put in peppers, very spicy. It's pain. It causes pain, no matter how you view it. Every animal you put capsaicin in their food will not eat the food. They're like, that's pain, never eating that. Limbic system. Humans will eat it. They'll eat the pain because they have made a decision to do so. When it comes to intimacy, you can do intimacy in two ways. You can do limbic system intimacy, experience it, or you can have prefrontal cortex intimacy. Guys, the line of arousal to limbic system looks like this. And a female's like this. So her arousal system, which I'll talk about the brain in a second, is much slower. So you're right. Why do guys get turned on from hugs? Because they got like this little range before they convert. And if you're a dude, you can go limbic system. When you're a limbic system, you're thinking only about yourself, which is arrive, get to Chicago. And if you go limbic system Chicago, you don't care how you get there, or who you hurt, or how you do it. This is not cool intimacy. But this is cool intimacy. This is your engaged. You're thinking about the other person. You have their interests at your heart. You're worried about not arriving, but enjoying the journey. That's prefrontal cortex. Guys have a very narrow range, and if they've never been taught or shown this, they flip over to limbic system. And when you're in limbic system, you are an a-hole because you care only about arriving. And guys do that in sex and intimacy, and you don't want to do that. I learned very early on to not shift into limbic system mode. It's way better to stay prefrontal cortex unselfish. Sometimes you don't arrive at the same place at the same time, and that's totally cool because you figure it out, it's mature, and it's about her from my perspective, not about me from that perspective. So, guys, yeah, get turned on. You'll be very careful. If you're a girl, you can probably French kiss 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes before you actually get this cross line. This guy, French kissing, 10 seconds, gone. Girls don't understand that. They're like, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is it's taking you forever. You're a crock pot. You don't put things fast in a crock pot. But the dude's like, I'm a microwave. You start there, and I'm on fire. 2 minutes, 22 seconds, popcorn's going. Put popcorn in a crock pot, you got 7, 8 hours. So you got to be really careful. You need to understand those differences. So far, are we okay? Issues in intimacy. If you're using them at the same time, how do we know if they help enhance the experience or if they just cause more problems and shouldn't be used? Valid question. Oftentimes, my first initial thing that comes to mind is not appropriate. So I'm just pausing. Okay, this is a good, solid question. Masturbation. Don't ask me, it's rhetorical. Good or bad? Sin or not a sin? Okay? Some church leaders consider masturbation equivalent to chastity issues. I do not. I actually don't consider masturbation a sin. But I will tell you this. Masturbation is self-arousal. And self-arousal favors what kind of intimacy pattern? So if you're needing self-arousal because you want that experience, then what you're teaching your body is that sex is on your time scale when you want it. That's a limbic system sex. But when you avoid self-arousal, then you recognize it's an unselfish intimacy, and intimacy is together, consensual with another person who you're in love with and are committed to, which means marriage. Sex is the symbol of that union. It's not to get to that union, it's the symbol. So when you're intimate post-maritally, then you don't need that self-stimulation masturbation component because that puts you here. So if you're an individual that uses a lot of this sort of masturbation components or sex toys and vibrators to get to here, then you take that into a marriage that doesn't work very good because a marriage by default is an unselfish union. Now, if you're in the unselfish union and you're using those toys to enhance that, cool, have at it. It's totally cool. It's yours. But if your partner's not okay with it, you're here and you're not good. That's not okay. So whenever saying what's appropriate in an intimacy in a marriage, anything's appropriate as long as two people are in agreement. But if one person's not comfortable with it, then it probably needs to be revisited and talked about. I'm not going to give you anything beyond that because I don't think it's my place, but I just want you to understand it's an unselfish union which makes those things work. Okay, how does an orgasm work? Well, it's your nervous system. Parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system working together. Parasympathetic is point. Sympathetic is shoot for the dude. So if the parasympathetic system is activated, that nifty extension changes shape. And if the sympathetic comes on, women are a little bit more complicated than that because they don't have the thing that, although they have a clitoris that does engorge slowly. Takes a little bit of time and effort. It's a journey, but it doesn't shoot. Okay? If you circumcise your baby, you don't want to be made fun of in the Sorry, that was out loud. That's usually one I filter. So every boy that's born, that little nifty extension, which I'm using my finger, has a coat, has skin covering on it called the prepuce. And we don't, that's sort of no purpose. It's just another belly button that collects lymph. So usually as a health strategy, we circumcise that. You definitely don't want to be doing that when you're older. Like, oh, I'm 16, I think I'll go get a circumcision. But if you're a little baby, you don't see them complain that much, a little bit of crying, but they'll stitch that up with a little rubber band and it'll pull off, and then it's just a health thing. It's not, yeah. And then, you know, if you ever get in a locker room situation, everybody knows is you got your prepuce on. Not that everybody's staring, but you know, it's just one of the things. It's usually not kosher in American life, but other countries they don't circumcise. The guys that aren't circumcised say it's way better for intimacy. Yeah, whatever. They don't know because they aren't circumcised. So I think if you live in America and it's not cultural, you should probably circumcise. It's just safer, cleaner, healthier. But you don't have to. Okay. If you're not happy with an answer, you can push back, but you may not want to. Can we talk about birth control for married women and how to deal with hormone changes, weight, mood changes? No, nobody talks about that. That's a group. I will mention that when we the reproductive system. I need to give you a little bit of background first on the way women work, and then it's a lot better for birth control. And if you don't know the hormones, those questions aren't as relevant. So I will talk about those. What happens to your body when you masturbate? How does it affect your relationships? Well, there you go. It puts you here, it teaches your brain about selfish unions, which I don't think work really good in marriage, but I wouldn't think of it as sin. I think if you think it's a sin, you're going to be feeling guilty for no reason. And that doesn't make sense to me. Just understand it's just a selfish thing. You should probably stop. Is getting kicked in the balls or giving birth more painful? I've only done one of these. Birth is no problem. I watched my wife birth 5 kids. I'm not into that. All right, then it's the sexual intimacy after marriage. I think I already answered that one. What's your favorite position? I do have one. Blue ball's a real thing. Thank you. I'm glad someone asked that. So blue balls. So there's a belief, a cultural belief that if you don't ejaculate, your testes will fill up with sperm and explode, or get really sore, and that's completely false. There's no such thing as blue balls. And you know this. Missionaries go on their mission for 2 years. They don't masturbate. They don't have spontaneous exploding balls. I don't know where to look when I say some of these things. I'm really thinking, it's just eye contact. Oh yeah, they complain about it because the limbic system really wants to ejaculate, especially if you're making out. They're like, whoa. And if the girl says, oh, I'm not interested. Well, I have to, or I'm going to get exploding balls. That's what limbic system argument. That's not going to explode. It's not dangerous. It's called, they have converted to here. And when you're converted here, what kind of things do you do or say? Anything. Selfish anything. They're not going to explode, not going to get infected. You just have to, this is where I say go outside, take some snow, put it down your pants. That will take you from the limbic system back into prefrontal cortex. Like, whoa, what's wrong with me? It helps you avoid post-nut regret. I'm learning all these terms. So post-nut regret is coming out of the limbic system. Once you do this little thing and you have this thing, you arrive in Chicago. If it's limbic system, then the dude's like, whoo, cool, that was fun. Goes right to sleep, and it's like nothing ever happened. The woman's like, whoa, you're kind of a jerk. But yeah, limbic systems are jerks. Prefrontal cortex understands and unselfish, so even if you arrive in Chicago before her, then you still understand it's part of the journey. And you don't just knock off and go to sleep, because that's a limbic system stuff. So dudes have to work hard to back and forth their understanding. This is an unselfish thing. And if you're hearing arguments like that, then that's not accurate. Yeah.
Can you scroll back over the Anderson before that got uploaded?
Oh, they got uploaded? Thanks. You want me to catch them? I think I'm okay. Advice for strengthening a marriage if you're struggling. Oh, it went away. Where'd it go? Oh, advice for strengthening a marriage if you're struggling with temptation and pornography. Ooh, that's a good one. I have all kinds of advice. Okay, yeah, pornography is a tough one. It's hard because it puts you here. It automatically sticks you here. So you got to be careful. Some science will teach you that pornography is useful for marriage. They have some data on that. I don't want to talk against science. I think that the science is much heavier that's not helpful. But for this is going to be taken wrong. For women, pornography, especially if you're like, I don't know, grew up in Burley, Idaho, where you never talk about sex ever. Sometimes introducing these ideas to female can help alleviate some of that strain of scaredness. But dudes, they're just like wired for it. So you don't want to like turn that wire on. if the guy's into pornography, that's really hard. That breaks a lot of trust in a woman, and you gotta get help. You gotta stop doing it, and she needs to feel 100% trusted. So if you're a dude, let me just say it this way: if you're a dude and you got caught and you're looking at pornography, you tell your wife, and she feels like she's betrayed you, whatever she needs. If she needs access to your phone, you give it to her. If she needs you to go talk to Bishop, you go talk to Bishop. If she needs you to take 12-step program, you go to 12-step program. Even if you don't need it, you go, she needs that reassurance because you reached a very important thing to her. It doesn't mean as much to you as it does to her, but you broke that. And to repair that, you just can't overnight repair it. It takes time, and you just got to be patient. I need a whole hour to really address that one, and I'm not going to do that unless it comes up again. But that's a super sensitive one. It's one I talk to couples a lot about all of the time. It's a very individualized thing. If you're in that mode and you trust me enough, you can come talk to me. I'll protect you, and I'll give you some more kind of specific advice on that. What do you wish you'd known but no one told you? I wish my dad would have told me to avoid the limbic system. Oh my gosh, it's so offensive. I didn't know that. And I wish he'd told me that's sex and not that. And I wish I'd never watched TV ever in my life, ever. The Love Boat that I was watching. That's in the 80s. What you guys are watching now. You think sex is The Bachelor and The Bachelorette? You're messed up. That's limbic system sex. Geared and mimicked as prefrontal cortex sex. But if you're having sex without being committed to marriage, it's not prefrontal cortex sex. It's only limbic sex. So I avoid stuff like that. I'm real sensitive. The only time I'll walk out of a movie, if someone gets their head chopped off, I'm good. Stab, shooting, no problem. Improper sex, I'm out of here. I don't need that. I don't want it. I don't want to be my wife that way. I'm not cool. I got 3 daughters. I'm not okay with people viewing women as sex objects. I mean, oh my gosh, I have 3 daughters. No. I'm a protector. I'm not doing that. So that's what I would say now. How can you give birth without ever knowing you were pregnant? Have no signs and symptoms of pregnancy. That must be some movie. You got to be kind of a really big person. That's the only way. I mean, if you're not a really big person, there's no need change. Fascinating. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I have to make up something. So I don't know. Yeah. I have no idea. There we go. Good job, Fallon. Huh? Cryptic pregnancy? I don't know anything about it. Kind of like cat and tampon. Can a girl get pregnant from pre-com? They're probably like, what's pre-com? Well, that's you probably can't talk about pre-com on that diagram. So that little extension will leak. So at one point in your life, all of you beat out 100 million sperm. You were the number one. You weren't a frontliner because the women's environment very sick. If you're a frontline sperm, you enter that vagina. D-Day, man. And you weren't behind either. You weren't a back end of it because you don't last very long. You were right in the middle. But you did beat out 100 million other sperm. So if you're ever feeling down about yourself, hey, at one time in my life, I was number 1. So not likely was pre-com, not much in there, and you need 100 million at least to get one shot at it, and then there's not much in there. So the chance If that's the case, you are a fertile myrtle. How can I always do that? In your opinion, what is it? I better read the whole thing. In your opinion, what is a good amount of time to have sex with your spouse? A week, a month? I'm a dude. It's daily. But she doesn't agree. So you have. So that's not a question. There's no. You can't put limits on that. It's a mutual thing. So she's not into the daily thing, so neither am I. Right? So it's a communication. I think in most marriages, which isn't always the case, but in most marriages, the guy's always a little bit, maybe not enough, and the woman's always a little bit, maybe too much. That's not always the case, but in the majority of cases, that's how it works. That's how testosterone is. So I'm not going to put a timeline on that. But if you're not having a lot of intimacy and it's not raining very much, it's probably because she's not feeling loved. And you're like, but I do all these things. Well, you got to really visit what you're doing and why you're doing that. She can see right through it. So, and if you're a dude, you're not really interested. Be careful about what you've been doing outside of that, or how much you've been participating. Because pornography and masturbation really ruin this. Because pornography and masturbation is really easy. It's hardly any work at all. That's work. That's like going to Chicago. And if you're used to just doing things without working, then you're just not interested in sex because it's not really. It's hard. It's too much work. So that's you really kind of visit yourself and where you're at. Okay, let's look at let's draw your brain. So this is not your brain. There's a dude's brain. Kind of looks like testing. Your limbic system, there's the same thing. But this is the brain looking this way, okay? Looking this way. So your two lobes of your brain right there. Looking at it straight at you. Okay, this is the male. And then we'll put the female here. Whoops. Functionally, you can't really see this anatomically, but functionally, this is how it works. Communication between the two lobes in a male looks like this. Communication between the two lobes in a female, it's like 10 times the amount. That creates like all kinds of interesting situations. It is literally possible for a dude to think about nothing for long periods of time. It's literally possible for two dudes to go out for lunch, to hang out, and talk about nothing. When I take my best friend out, we go to lunch, let's go to lunch. My wife said, what do you guys talk about? How are his kids? How's his work? You were there for an hour. I don't know what we talked about. I don't think we talked about anything. Like it's literally possible to do that. Not possible for a female. Let me show you. So I'm getting to your question now about stress, but this is you should kind of start seeing something. But let's look. Let's just if you put marriage on the board, okay? Marriage. None of these dumb marks. It wasn't trying to. So marriage, there's a lot of things that come to mind, and I'm going to have trouble here because I have this dude. But like some of you girls will have to help out on colors, dress, I don't know, people, invitations, cake.
Children.
What? I'm wedding. I meant a wedding. That messed up the girl's dad right there. Oh yeah, but I was thinking, yeah, good. I'm stuck. Nail. I can't spell that.
Food. Dinner. Where?
You see what happened, dude? Yeah. Let me show you how. When a guy sees a list like this, his brain, the way it's designed, he cannot look at it. It will automatically do something. He will prioritize it and put a number one by something. Put it by the most important thing on that list according to his brain. Which is pregnant. Oh. Then on this list, you might get 3 things. 2, 3. But like, oh my gosh. And you're like, it's impossible. You don't have the capacity. But a woman's brain looks like this. One. And guys don't understand that. They're like literally the same level of importance, which I can't fathom. How can they be the same level of importance? There's only one thing on here that's important. But she literally. So you go into intimacy like this. Orgasm and intimacy requires extreme focus. That's a microwave. We can shut out everything, and what am I doing at this moment? Oh, whoop. Nothing else matters. It could be in the middle of the road. If you pass this line, with people, a guy could care less. But a woman is aware of a little mouse wandering around the house. She hears, what's that? Like, what? So it's hard to focus. So you've got to understand these kind of things. This is the only time my wife and I fight, is when I prioritize something and she thinks I should have prioritized it differently. I'm like, look, I got 3 options. You gave me a list of 20. I can't prioritize those other things. It's impossible. And so she's like, oh, rolls her eyes. But this is scary for a dude, especially if you're getting married. Anybody that's engaged getting married, you have to literally, guys, physically say, all right, what time is it? Let's say 6 in the morning. This is probably not happening. You're not even married yet. So just say, I'm not going to worry about that until like whenever, midnight. And so then, by default, you'll reprioritize. And on this list, you got 2 now. So you say, wow, this is great food. Who thought of this? Or, this cake is beautiful, and you remove that. But if you don't prioritize physically, you'll offend your wife. And she'll say, is that the only thing you're thinking about? Don't ever answer that. But men are really easy to manipulate. So let me teach you how to manipulate men. Sorry, guys. You just ask this question. You wake up Saturday morning, you call your girlfriend, you say, hey, what do you want to do today? She says, I want to go shopping. Okay? Not a problem. It's not a problem. The next question is the problem. What are we looking at? If you say to him, oh, nothing, his brain will implode. Fine. And he's just an absolute turd. Dragging everywhere, it's miserable. It's because you can't prioritize anything. All you have to say is, look, I want to go shopping, and I want to look for some little slippers with a white fuzzy on them for $2. And he's like, well, that's good. That's what we do. We prioritize. We got testosterone. We can do that. So you go into the store and he starts looking, and you can do your whatever it is you do, and you can be like, come back and be like, hey, there's no slippers in this store. You're like, huh? Should we try another? Yeah, we got to try another store. Ideally, the thing you're asking to buy doesn't exist. You go 8 hours, not even miss lunch. It's just like, I can't find it. And then you just say things like, you're probably just not capable. That's how you manipulate testosterone. I had a boyfriend that found it once in 10 minutes. So, if you want to compliment a man, recognize when a man looks up and he stands up in front of the mirror, he's looking at the one thing on his body that he likes. Always, eyes go right there. It could be his left bicep. And when he walks in the mirror, it's right there. And he'll do the hair, back to it. That's what we do. So, to compliment a man, you just have to find that thing. Women, for some reason, won't do it. They're like, I know what he wants. I'm not complimenting him. His head was so big. But he needs that bad. If you just say to him, have you been working out? That bicep looks bigger than this. You now own him. All he needs is 1 month of that. Once a month, he'll be like, you're amazing. I love you. But a woman, for some reason, when she goes to the mirror, she looks at everything she don't like. And so you got to be very careful about those things. It's a way. I don't know why we do that. Men look at what they like. Women look at what they don't like. So complimenting a woman, well, you're never going to do But you have to do it all the time and try and learn. She has to teach you how to do it. And don't compliment her body, heaven forbid. Compliment something else. I've learned. If my wife wants to look professional, I have to say, you look very professional. But if I mess that up and say you look sexy and she wants to look professional, done. That's non-recoverable. Exercise your babies, by the way, you should not do that. It should be a donkey. What's your favorite position? Here's a question I often get. It's like, if you're pregnant, how long can you have sex? And I said, well, I said once, I said, you probably have sex all the way up until you have a baby. And she says, this girl's like, isn't that awkward with all the doctors and nurses in there? That's real humor. That got me good. Okay, how do you handle when the man's expectation for intimacy is not realistic to the woman? Ooh, now we're talking vulnerability. Yeah, this is why I wanted to introduce this, because you've got to talk about this. Like what I said, you know, if I'm a dude, yeah, like daily, I'm cool with. But my wife's not cool with that, so now what do you do? So if I'm daily and she's like once a week, we're really far apart. And one of us is going to feel pressured and the other one's not going to feel loved. So you have to address that. This is one of the most difficult things you'll ever talk about in marriage. That's why you have to have words to talk about it that are not around intimacy. And you'll be very careful about pointing your finger, right? Because when you point your finger, you've got 4 pointing back at yourself, 3. That's your thumbs like mine. And that's really where it's at. So you've got to have those hard conversations. And she has to tell you why she's not feeling loved. You have to listen to that feedback and address it. If you're not, you just pout. Just pout. Stomp out of the house, slam the door, walk off, be quiet, be selfish, don't do anything, prove her wrong. This is why marriages are right there, because we can't talk about it, because we don't know how to talk about it. But it's likely if the expectations are unrealistic, you need to tell him the expectations are unrealistic, and he's going to have to adjust. And you're going to have to adjust. You both can't get what you want. So there has to be this, and that's what's cool about a marriage. It's just an amazing journey. But if you don't talk about it, then you just sit, and you go away, and just quiet. And then you end up in different rooms, and you don't like each other anymore. You fall out of love. I'm like, how did that happen? You were in love. It's because your expectations are not being met, and your expectations are probably wrong. So you've got to talk about it. It's hard. This is why I'm introducing this idea of dry farming. Just say to your husband, explain to this, and say, I feel like you're dry farming. And then talk about it. And he'll be like, if he's like me, which I'm sure he is, he'll be like, oh, shoot, I didn't get that. I'm sorry. Then, when you learn, you might say something like, how about we're not intimate for a couple of months until I figure out how to do this better. And she'll say to you, that is amazing. I said, look, I love you more than anything, and you're hurt. And I'm hurt because I don't feel like you love me back because I need intimacy. So we've got a disconnect. Let's take a break from intimacy. Let's come back and communicate and stuff, because we're going to be at this for 50 years. Let's figure out how to work this out. So let's remove that. Let's date each other. Let's fall in love again. Let's figure out how to do this intimacy properly. That's what you do. Uncomfortable? You better believe it. Difficult? Yeah. But that's called unselfish needs. Okay, that's good. I feel like I was on a soapbox. We got that. So when I'm going number 2, straining hard, sperm comes out the front and I'm broken. How do you know it's sperm? Are you like collecting it on a microscope? What are you doing when you're going number 2? Nobody's broken. I mean, You got to push to pee or push to poo. So imagine when you're pushing, both things are going. Girls know this automatically because it just happens at the same time. Their systems are so close. But no, you're not broken. Does pineapple juice really make the vagina taste sweeter? It's one of them things you probably got to do, but I imagine probably so. Not that I'm embarrassed, it's just I just got to be careful what I'm about to say. I really am, yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure it does. Why do I have to be careful? Yeah, well, my filter's not pretty. How do you help someone you're dating who's overly emotional and insecure all the time? Well, whew. Okay. Let's be vulnerable. I worked on PhD for 10 years. While I worked on that PhD for 10 years, I studied every book on physiology. I read it, I memorized it. I was married the whole time. So I worked on my PhD 10 years. Read everything about physiology. Married at the same time, read nothing about marriage. Not a single book on marriage. Not one. So at 10 years, I got my PhD. I got a job, started making money. My wife and I, we did not like each other. She didn't feel loved, neither did I. So what do? Well, we got married in the temple. So I said, what did I do in the temple? I realized that at the altar, I had made a covenant with God. Not with her, I made a covenant with God. I said, mistake, I'd make it work. So I said, okay. So I can't really make this not work. It's not working. We're not happy. Divorce is not an option. I should maybe go read about marriage. So I went to Google and Thumb, and I said, hey, tell me the top 10 marriage counsel books. And I got them. I bought all of them. Had a job, had some money, bought them all. All 4 of them. Started reading them. 10 of them. Did I say 4? Bought all 10 of them. But only 4 of them were valid. I started reading them, and I was like, oh my gosh, how is this woman even married to me? If this is how she feels, I get it. One of them was on communication. We were in the living room. I was reading the chapter on communication. She was talking to me. I was sort of listening or sort of reading, but I heard that, which means she asked me a question. I was like, oh crap. I looked up. I was like, I didn't know what she's going to say. She knows me. She's so mad at me for communicating. I looked down at my book and it said, that must be difficult for you. I had a phrase in parentheses. So I said, that must be difficult for you. She goes, it is. And she kept talking. And I was like, another phrase down there said, how did you manage? So I let her finish and so how did you manage? Well, and then she I literally had a conversation with my wife with a marriage counseling book in hand, talking to her. And afterwards she says, she got up and she looked at me and she goes, that's the first time I've ever felt listened to. She walked off. And I was like, huh. So, I guess to answer your question, how do you help someone who's dating who's overly emotional and insecure all the time? Maybe it's not them, maybe it's you. And I took a book hard, and I learned how to be a marriage counselor. Like I studied those books like I studied physiology. I memorized, I applied, I stopped worrying about her. I worried only about myself. I fixed myself. I learned to respond to her properly. And I fixed myself, which fixed her. And we just started coming closer because I was actually the problem. Something I had not thought of. I was the problem. Oh, so hard. But I fixed it because I was willing to take an effort. So if someone feels insecure, then you should learn how to communicate with them so they don't feel insecure. That's on you. And they'll fix it, but they're feeling insecure. And if you're the one feeling insecure, you should take it upon yourself to read and study about how not feeling insecure. You can't just expect things to be fixed. There are people that are amazing. They study this for a living, and they wrote books. You don't have to pay money for it. Go to the library, run them out, check them out, read them. Go to reading about anatomy. I'm teaching you about anatomy-physiology. I can teach you about marriage intimacy because I studied it because I wasn't good at it. So that would be my advice. Like, if you're not reading any book on marriage and you're getting married, what are you doing? Yeah.
Do you have like book recommendations?
Yeah. Which ones do you want? So one of my favorite books, Laura Brotherson, she's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Laura and I have done some stuff together. And she's a sex therapist, but she's LDS. She makes me blush. But she wrote a really good book. It's called Knowing Her Intimately. Knowing Her Intimately. I'm not getting any commission from Laura, but Knowing Her Intimately is good. I would read it together-ish. I don't know that I'd do the last chapter. She talks about sexual positions, which is probably not good if you're getting married. But if you're married, okay, whatever, that's your thing. But her first, 10 chapters, they nail it. Like, if you're a woman reading this, you're like, yeah, I do feel like that. And you can talk to your guy and say, I do feel like this. And he'll be like, huh. She speaks in a way that the guys get. I would hate to give a guy advice like that who's a player and says, now I know how to manipulate women. Like, if you're doing that to have sex with women, you're going to hell. I can't say that. But if it's my daughter you're trying to do that with, we're going together. I'm not going to murder. So you would never want to use that ability and tactics to manipulate a woman if you're a dude. And likewise, you would never use your sex to manipulate a man, right? Women, you can. Marriages exist all the time like that. They're volatile. The woman understands if I give him sex, I get whatever I want in terms of his bank account. That never works. It's not working for Donald Trump, but that's how it's working. And those rich people, that's why they never find those happiness, because the woman uses her looks to get what she wants from him. That's the same problem. And the guy uses his charm and manipulation to get. That's so selfish, it never works. It's volatile, explosion. It's unselfish.
That last question you read, I think it was in reference to dating.
Where? Does pineapple juice?
No.
Yeah. Hormone birth control and pros and cons of it. I know everybody wants it. Is it eating sperm technically cannibalism? Okay. Don't be weird.
Don't be weird.
I want to encourage all questions. Are totally cool. Here's something interesting you probably should know. If you're a dude and you have testes, then and you're a woman, you have ovaries. They're the only two places in your body that the immune system cannot have access to. Your immune system has access to your nervous system, all organs, blood everywhere. Immune cells are not allowed in the testes. Immune cells are not allowed in the ovaries. Because if they are, they'll destroy them completely. If you're a dude playing racquetball with a pencil in your pocket and stab one of your testes, that's going to breach that barrier, and your immune system will have access to it and wipe out that entire testis. It will not be burned. What does that mean? They're not yours, is what it means. Your body has never seen them. They're not yours. God has given you a steward to be a steward over those. They're not yours. You can't do whatever you want with them. So be careful about what you're doing with them. They're not yours. They're the creative power. God gave you almost all of his power. Creation's one of them. Oh my gosh, that's a huge power, and they're not yours. The eggs in the ovary, you've never seen them before, they're not yours. You're carrying those. You're stewards over them. Your sperm, even though there's billions of them, they're not yours. You've never seen them before. You're the steward. So when I hear something like that, it's fine, but I just want to look at the perspective of what and why they're doing that stuff in terms of God's power. How many areas can a female versus male climb on? Areas? Times? Areas?
I think they mean because there's certain arousal areas in the body, right?
Yeah, women have more than men. Men can be aroused with their eyes. I mean, they're microwaves. I think a hug's bad. Eyes are just, they're not just touching and they can be aroused. Women usually need quite a bit of mechanical stimuli. So they have multiple areas that are arousal, but it's usually not enough for just penile penetration. So on top, straight. So she got multiple areas. Takes a long time. Guys, a couple areas. Very sensitive. All the genitalia are very sensitive. So I don't know if I can say areas, but that area, genitalia, is very sensitive. What's the most important thing to create and maintain good? Okay, what's the most important thing to create and maintain a good sex life throughout marriage? Friendship, affections, spirituality, togetherness, kindness. Like, you should always be, like, I've seen dudes date their girlfriends. They're not wives, they're dating. So, I saw this one kid, I almost slapped him. He'd wake up every morning at 4 a.m. and leave her a cupcake at her door. She worked the early morning janitorial shift. Doesn't that sound romantic? Yeah, not sustainable. When they got married, he did nothing. She felt like, what a waste. Guys get so dumb and so weird. Like, I'm going to show how I'm amazing. So you do things when you're dating, you never do in your marriage. I'm like, oh, you got to do things all the time. I'll give you a couple that I'm doing, not humble bragging, but maybe as I'm super nervous about that. Maybe as I did. I steal these dry erase markers, take them home, and I leave my wife love notes in the morning on a mirror. Not every morning, but very consistently. Sometimes I'll draw her a picture, sometimes I'll put something, she wakes up, goes in there, she sees this note. I've done that for ever since the dry erase marker was invented. She does certain things as well, and that's an important component. You've got to how do you keep it? You have to do stuff like that. Like I sent my wife a flirting text yesterday. We've been married 30 years, but I figured out how to do an invisible text. Accidentally sent it to a friend of mine. I hit the buttons and invisible. What the heck did I do? Ooh, that's cute. So then I sent her a flirting text, invisible. She burst out laughing. But that's it's what you do daily. You work on it. We're in love. So we're not always getting along, by the way. Sometimes we have to talk in 3 days because we're so mad at each other. That's just part of it. That doesn't define our relationship. That defines what we're in right now. We're mad at each other. It's fine, whatever. Neither one of us are going to quit. We just don't want to talk to each other. But we're still flirting, still processing. So that's what I think what it is, spontaneity. And I'll sometimes just go home and take her to a movie, not even tell her. I love surprising her. I love surprising my wife with gifts. She hates it. So there's another problem. She wants to know exactly what she's getting. So I'm like, I used to try to surprise her all the time. She hated all the gifts. So now I just give her the credit card, say, well, buy your Christmas, and then you surprise me, because I love surprises. When you open it, I'll be surprised that I bought you that. It's a compromise. I want to surprise anybody on Christmas, like him, like, wow, that is cool. What do you know now that you think we need to know? Any topic within marriage? Yeah, I mean, literally, I try to give it to you. But, gosh, I wish I had known this. I wish I had known that intimacy is a prefrontal cortex and not a limbic system. I just wish I had known that. I just wish I had known that, because prefrontal cortex intimacy is so much more fulfilling and powerful than limbic system intimacy. I just wish someone had explained that to me in a way that I could have understood it. What this means, of course, then, is it's an unselfish thing. You're not worried about arriving. You're worried about the journey, and sometimes if you don't arrive at the journey, you've got to be okay with that. Guys just have to learn that, and she doesn't want to go to Chicago, but she had fun going to South Dakota. So you're like, okay, that was fun. And you've got to learn to enjoy that. Sometimes you just have to lie next to each other naked and not do anything. It's just skin contact. It's intimacy. Sometimes you have to go to a concert together and not expect anything after that. Sometimes you have to buy her a gift and flowers just because. I thought of you. Here's some flowers. By the way, there's no strings attached. They're just yours. I'm not expecting anything else. They're just your flowers because I love you. Here's a candy bar. Anytime I go to the store and buy me a candy bar, I buy her a candy bar. She doesn't ever eat it, so I get 2. But she then I I bought the candy bar, I think sometimes you buy a candy bar for you. I said, no, I don't like mounds. She knows this. She loves mounds. I hate mounds. I always buy a mounds. She loves them. Sometimes she eats them, but rarely does she. I'm like, I don't care. I'll throw it in the trash. But I went and bought a candy bar, thought of you. That's what you do. So I wish I'd known that. All right? Is it okay to masturbate if you're doing it together? That's up to you. Just make sure you're not limbic system. Does drinking your man's sperm cause clear skin? I don't know. I've never done that. Why does sex hurt initially? Well, because there's not enough space. And that's something you want to think about because, guys, intimacy for you on a honeymoon is real easy. Piece of cake. But for a woman who's not had that experience before, it's not pleasant. It's kind of scary, kind of intrusive. So you got to think about that. And you got to like. This is why you have to have open conversation before. I wouldn't say if you're getting married to have it every day, because you'll turn the microwave on. But you do want to have it at least every once in a while. And one needs to understand, hey, we may not be able to have sex the first night of our honeymoon because I'm not ready. My body's not prepared for that. It has to be a slow process. And the dude has to be like, yeah, cool. And if your dude's not okay with that, then dump him in the garbage. Like, dump him in the garbage. What dude would not be okay with that? Like, come on. So you might have to do a process. There are jellies that you can use that would help that process, so it's not super painful, but it's got to be a slow process. But it might not be amazing the first time, but it does get better because there are structural changes that occur in the vagina, which makes it a lot better. But you want to think about that's a real thing you need to talk about and have the discussion.
There's a question.
Keep me out there.
It's okay. How do you overcome fear of marriage when you have a poor example of relationships growing up?
I know. Find better examples. Yeah, it's so good. That's why it's a process, and I would have no problem asking them. Find better examples. If you don't have good role models, if your parents were not goodly married, and they weren't goodly parents, example of life. Why does it play such a big role in talking? Why does it play such a big role in talking before marriage? Yeah, I mean I think I've kind of illustrated that out why it's important to talk about this. It's just making sure this is anonymous. When and how do you start on birth control? You get ready? Yeah, start early. Birth control will cause hormonal changes in a woman, and those aren't sometimes pleasant. Sometimes women, no problem at all. But if you're going a month before, oh, you feel yucky. I'd go 3 months. Let's give it a 3-month window. What is pre-cum? Where does it come from? Comes sperm, just leaky. Okay, everybody wants to know pre-cum. How does sperm? I get it. Are there really 5 types of vaginas? I actually don't know that. What is the lubricant females release and how is it secreted? Where does it come from? Yeah, their vaginal canal releases lubricant at the right time. Women are not always sexually active, so having sex at different times a month can make it not very pleasant. Guys got to be aware of that. The last thing you want to do is have an unpleasant experience with your wife during intimacy, so she's like, I don't like that at all. You should wait till it's the most time. And that's like days 14, right? 10 to 14 between that month is when she's most receptive. So it happens any time, of course, but there are better times. We'll talk about that more. How can I encourage more emotional intimacy in a relationship? Make sure that you're the emotionally strong one before you start playing. Can you prevent tearing during birth? No, I don't want to talk about birth. I want to talk about baby. How can you stop an erection? Snow down the pants. How long should it take for sex to feel good for a woman? How long should it take for a woman to be able to finish through sexual intercourse? Yeah, that's a very specific question, but understand that there's no real, it's okay talking about stuff like that. I don't know how long it could take. It could be weeks, could be months, yeah. Why do your balls hurt after intense make-out? It's not blue balls, because you're fighting to go into this. Blue balls is not a thing where it's an explosion. It's a transition to here, and your limbic system wants you to ejaculate. But you back that off, wait 20 minutes, they won't hurt. It's not that they hurt, it's just that you're dying to get in here, and the limbic system is saying, you should really do something about these emotions. But you don't need to do anything about those emotions. If you're making it after that extent, you've crossed over this line, probably time to stop. And I had to do that when I was dating my wife in high school, really. we did something else after I got back on my mission, which I'll maybe talk about, but not gross thing. But we just decided not to kiss after my mission until we got married. But pre-mission, a lot of kissing, a lot of stuff, and I just learned I'd like to get up and run. I just pulled a Joseph. When I felt those feelings, I'm like, I'm out of here. Run out the door, run outside, run into my car, run home. She's like, what are you doing? Nothing. And I told her, I said, that was too much. That is too much. I was getting a little bit, I could feel my brain through her reports. I started, I'm like, I can't do this. Fortunately, I at least had some sense in me. I haven't heard that word since It's called air pockets. We do the same thing here. Why do women not create more eggs and men create more sperm? I know that we talk about that with women. How does molestation wire the brain affect future intimacy? Woo. Yeah. The past only defines you as far as you let it define you. So just because your parents were bad parents does not mean you're a bad parent. Just because you have bad marriage does not mean you'll be a bad marriage partner. Just because you had molestation issues or abuse when you were young does not make you a bad sexual partner. It's how you're viewing that mindset. That does not define you. Don't ever think mindsets. That does not define you. How important is foreplay before sex? It's super important for women, not for a man. Is it normal for a men's testicles to hurt after sex? Is it the first time having sex? Yeah, probably. Are there natural forms of birth control? Yeah, abstinence. No one likes that one. Is there a way to prevent twins? No. Why do we get pleasure from it? How to achieve it? Why do we get pleasure from it? How to achieve pleasure? I don't understand that yet. I have to restate that one. You guys get erections at random times and they're covered up and that too? Yeah, they do. Yeah. It's a sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic. You can get them working out in the middle of the night, during the day. Yeah, it can be a little awkward. Why do they do that? It's just a nervous system thing. Why do you just not care about stuff like that sometimes? I know. You don't care about intimacy because you move in limbic. I'm telling you, when you're in limbic system, you don't care about anything. So if you're a dude trying to withstand pornography, for example, at nighttime, and you're like, here, I don't want to do it, but you worry about it all day long, night comes, you're moving closer here, you start browsing, you're spending time on YouTube, like, I don't know, I'm just bored, I'm not doing anything bad, okay, watch out. I don't care what I do now. So you just gotta recognize that. You don't care when you're in limbic system mode. So I don't like to be in limbic system mode. I don't like it. I've had it before, I've experienced it, I don't like it, I don't feel like I'm in control. I way better like being in control. How's the vasectomy work? Snip, snip. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And you have an influence on the gender of baby? No. How's a butt plug affect snips? I don't know. As a general rule, I've never used an exopharyngeal. If my wife wants to go and like get an STD, we'll be like, no, you're not going to get STD unless you have multiple cars. What if I had my period 1 week and 1 week off? Why? And would it affect anything? What if I had my period 1 week on and 1 week off for a year? Yikes. That's awful. Yeah, that's like, why didn't you go see someone? That sounds terrible. Yeah, that's birth control. You need some, you can maybe leave that birth control. Just trying to buzz through, see if there's anything. Are there any ones at the top, Emma, that I missed that are good? Some of them are good. Really? I'm still seeing the same ones at the top.
There's one that asks about how to help their future wife.
Help your wife. There's a lot more. Needs more mechanical stimulation. Good experiment there. Any questions that somebody I didn't answer? Somebody wants to just I know. Let's do those real quick. We only have 5 minutes. Then we come back on Thursday. I'm going to only do test stuff. Spend You need this too. I know. Why don't they have birth control for men? It's a stupid system. We put our women through hell, and guys are never, ever expected to know. The only thing they have birth control for men is vasectomy. And apparently you can manipulate women's hormones, and although it makes her sick, it doesn't destroy the physiology of the body. But manipulate testosterone corrects the entire physiology of the body. So women have redundancy hormones, men have one. So if you give a birth control that affects testosterone, you have major side effects. But vasectomy should be more considered by guys, because if you're expecting just your wife to do that, you have no sympathy for that. That doesn't sit well with you. There are pretty major side effects of women's hormones, yeah. I prefer like a condom protection, because then it's not affecting my wife's hormones nor mine. Copper IUDs are great too, but they're usually for 10 years, so kind of long lasting. But they're just kind of intrusive, but they are just going once, yeah, it doesn't mess up the hormones. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, first time you get married, you start getting intimate, you'll get yeast infections, and it's unpleasant. Guys need to understand what yeast infection is, itchy, uncomfortable, because yeah, you're getting a new sperm in, and your body has to adjust. That takes a couple of months sometimes. So if that's the case, then you should probably use some condoms as protection so you're not getting extra pain. Yeah, you've got to think about stuff like that.
There's something we kind of addressed last class about selection is what is the best way to bring in pornography with those people?
Yeah. If you're dating somebody who gets to the DTR, you got to bring it up solid. You got to be specific. You can't say you have a problem with pornography. A guy will say no every time. You got to say, when's the last time you looked at a picture of a naked woman? If it's a deacon, I'd always say, when's the last time you looked at boobs? Because I had to be more specific for the deacons. And they're like, they just sit there petrified. And I say, go ahead. You know what they are. When was the last time you looked? And that's kind of, you have to be very specific about that. But I wouldn't do that first date. I wouldn't ask someone to marry the first date. It's just me. And I wouldn't ask them to come for the first date. But recognize it's such a big problem. If you're female or a dude, you're going to have to ask the question at some point, unless you don't care. I think the question care. And the question's got to come out. It's not fun conversation. But if you can't talk about that, look at it this way. I'll end with this. Let's sit down there. I wouldn't call pornography a deal breaker. But it has deal breaker components. But imagine you asking a boyfriend if he has pornography, when's the last time you looked at your naked woman? He tells you straight up. That hurts. But now you have closeness to the Lord. Now you have that thing open. Now you can communicate. That can result in very close, intimate conversations that are very helpful. But if you shut them down and call him whatever you call people who do that or offended you, then you'll never have that conversation again. And then you have to make a decision about what's okay. Is he trying to improve? Are you trying to improve? And work on that. But opening that up is a very powerful, nice vulnerability talk. But you have to be very careful how you respond. Let me give you this analogy. I think this is important now because I just had this inspired. If you marry a guy, and you're like, I will never do this. Well, you might. Let's say you marry a guy, he meets all the boxes. Quite amazing. Amazing husband, amazing father, understands this, amazing, always feel loved, but he smokes. Got a nicotine problem. Okay? But everything else hits all the boxes. Let's say he smokes 5 cigarettes a day. And he's been doing that since age 10. And he comes to you and he says, hey, you know what? Last month I only smoked 4 cigarettes. How does everybody feel about that? Yeah. You might even tell him that. You might even say, that's amazing. Because of that, he'll be like, huh. He'll come to you next month and say, hey, I'm down to 3 cigarettes. You're like, wow, that's amazing. He comes back and he says, I'm down to 2, down to 1. Comes back, I'm back up to 2. That's okay, because you're amazing. You were at 5, you're at 2, you're amazing. And he quits because he's supported and loved. Now he comes to you and he says, wow, last month I looked at pornography 4 hours a day instead of 5. And we say, you dirtbag. You're a dirtbag. How's he ever going to fix it? How's he ever going to overcome? I recognize it's a very intimate and difficult thing to do with, and it deal breaker. I totally get that. But if we're going to be open and honest, we have to be willing to receive it. Nothing disappoints me more than somebody saying, I want to know everything. And then when you tell them everything, they say, I don't want a thing to do with it. If you don't have the ability to receive everything, don't ask. All right. I'll see you Thursday.